So to make a Makka Pakka cake topper, you're going to need some very light brown fondant, which I have dyed. I've taken some white fondant and I've used some dark brown chocolate flavoured fondant and just added some to the white fondant until it turned this kind of stony colour. I've then coloured 3 little balls of white fondant, just a little bit darker brown and a tiny little chocolate brown there. I've added some gum trag to the big ball already, just to make it dry harder, so that it's good for models because it makes them set better. Some cocktail sticks and some edible glue if you have it. If not, just a paintbrush and some water is absolutely fine. So first of all, we're going to cut some of the body colour off, about a quarter for the head, and some smaller slices for the arms and the legs, and just place those to one side. I'm just going to roll the body to smooth it, to get any creases and cracks out, and then using a firm pressure at one side of my hands, shape it into a teardrop or a pear shape, which you can then place on the board, and that's Makka Pakka's body. Now I'm just going to take the smaller of the 2 side portions that I cut off to make Makka Pakka's legs. These don't have to be very big at all, as he's kind of sat on them, so you can only really see the end of his legs. I'm just going to cut the smaller ball in half and roll those into 2 very short teardrop shapes. I'm going to flatten the bottom for the bottom of his leg, so that his foot, and I'm going to do the same with the second piece and make a little indent in the bottom of each one so we can put a pad for the bottom of his foot. Apologies here for it being slightly off camera. I'm going to place those against the body, so you can see that that's his legs sticking out from the body. I'm now going to take half of the chocolate brown and smooth it. I'm going to cut it in half and roll it into 2 balls. And flatten those on the board into 2 sort of flat discs. And then I'm going to place those into the little indents that we've made on the bottom of his feet. At this stage, I'm just going to place a little cocktail stick down into his body. You can use spaghetti, dried spaghetti if you would rather. I just find a cocktail stick is a little more stable. So twisting that down so as not to squash the body, I'm now going to take the slightly larger of the 2 small balls that I cut off the main body, and it makes about a cherry tomato sized piece. I'm going to cut that in half and roll it into 2 long teardrop shapes for Makka Pakka's arms. And just using my little finger, as you can see here, I'm rolling to make an indent almost where his wrist would be, and then I'm just going to flatten the hand. I'll take the non-cutting side of a knife and indent some little fingers. Do that on both arms. Now I'm going to place the arms on the body using a bit of edible glue or water, and just position them on either side of the body and see what looks best. You can always move them if you're not happy. I think I've made mine a little bit too long, so I'm just cutting them down a bit at an angle, and I'll place them back on the body a little bit shorter. There, that's better. And just have a little bit of a play around with them until you're happy that they're firmly on there. So next is the head, the final ball, the largest ball of the body coloured fondant. I'm going to smooth it, get rid of all the cracks, and then shape it into an oval. Again, apologies for doing this quite off screen. Take as much time as you need to get the shape of the head right. It is an oval. He does sometimes look as if he's got a rugby ball shaped head, but actually we're going to deal with that later with the little pile of boulders. So a nice smooth oval is ideal here. I'm going to use a ball tool, but the end of a paintbrush or anything like that would do, a clean paintbrush obviously, to just indent the eyes. Now I've got some of the second darkest fondant, about a very small pea size. I'm going to cut that in half and roll it into 2 little balls to place in the eye sockets, and then use the ball tool to flatten them in. Next you need a tiny little piece of white, cut it in half and into balls again, and place that in the eye sockets. That's the eyeballs. And finally, a smaller bit still of the chocolate brown. Roll those into tiny little balls and place that as the pupil in the eye. Now for the nose, I'm just taking a tiny bit of the original body colour and rolling it into a sort of an oval shape, and just placing that fairly close to his eyes as a little nose. Now I'm using a half circle tool for his smile, but you could mark it on with a cocktail stick. It's entirely up to you. Gives him a little cheeky smile. Okay, so now to make the little boulder parts on his head. They look like little piles of boulders and sort of act as almost his hair and his ears. It sounds ridiculous to say, but that's kind of what it is. So I've taken some of the second lightest fondant and made 3 evenly sized balls about the size of a small pea. Again, apologies for this being off the screen. I'm just going to flatten each of those small balls to make a little disc shape and leave those on the mat. Take the next darkest colour and make 3 slightly smaller balls, and then flatten those and place them on top of the original balls. And finally the darkest colour, aside from the chocolate obviously, smaller balls again, and just finish off the little piles. So as I say, these are to go on the top and the sides of his head. And just to make sure that the side ones don't fall off as they're literally clinging to the side of his head, I'm going to use a cocktail stick. You can again use spaghetti if you prefer. I've snapped the cocktail stick in half, and I'm just going to insert 1/2 into each side of his head, twisting as I go so as not to squash his head. And then it's fairly simple just to position the little ear boulder piles, for want of a better name, onto the cocktail sticks. And just position them as you need. Okay, so finally, you're placing the third pile on the top using a little bit of water or glue. That doesn't really need a cocktail stick because it has gravity to help it stay. And then you're placing the head on the body, and there we have a finished Makka Pakka. I just angle him up a little bit for you to see. It's best to leave him to dry for a few hours if you can before placing him on the cake. If not, don't worry, he should be fine as he's a seated character. Thank you for watching. Please check out my other videos over on my YouTube channel. I do have a Makka Pakka over there to complement this one. Thanks ever so much, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.